Hello there, welcome to Author Hour with Richard Lyntton. I am your host, Richard Lyntton, author of North Korea Deception, book 1 in the Deception series. North Korea Deception is an international political spy thriller available in all formats, including audiobooks. Today, my guest is the #1 best-selling author of the Philadelphia legal series, William L. Myers Jr. His 4th book in the series is the highly compelling, plot-twisting, page-turner courtroom drama, A Criminal Justice, not to be confused with his first novel, A Criminal Defense, which is book 1 in the series. Born into a blue-collar family, Bill inherited a work ethic that propelled him through college and into the Ivy League at the highly prestigious University of Pennsylvania School of Law. But after 10 years defending corporate America, he realized his heart wasn't in it, so he started his own firm and began fighting for the man on the street. And we must also mention that Bill even had the rare honor of arguing before the United States, Supreme Court. Bill is quite simply one of our best local authors. Thank you, Bill. Thank you so much for joining us.
Richard,
how are you?
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I'm very excited.
So exciting. So this is like my first thriller writer to have on the show.
Thriller writer to thriller writer.
It's great.
I like this. I do like this.
I'm really excited. So right off the bat, and I always get through about a quarter of my questions because we end up chatting, which is the whole idea.
Yeah.
Real quick. So just read A Criminal Justice, the 4th book. There's a couple of things I just want to ask you right off the bat. That you reference a Tesla Greyhound bus / car. Is that real, for real, or did you make that up?
It's not real yet. It probably will be real before long.
Okay, so there's a grain of truth to it.
There's a grain of truth. There's
I'm
a grain
writing
of truth
this
to everything.
Okay, exactly. When I was reading it, I'm like, wow, this guy's good. You know, so there's a grain of truth, and then the piñata thing. You describe the American legal system. Is that literally what you are taught in law school, or did you sort of come up with that scenario?
You're not taught that in law school. When you're in law school, you kind of view law as a noble profession.
Yep.
You know, you're going to go into courtroom, you're going to argue logically, rationally, but when you start to actually get into the courtroom and you start fighting, you see that it is like street fighting. Right. And I say that
In the verbal sense.
In the verbal sense. Yeah. Hopefully in the verbal sense. You know, we say that the American justice system it's an adversary system, right? Like the British legal system. When I think of the British legal system, though, I think of guys in white wigs arguing very respectfully to judges, treating each other very respectfully in the courtroom. Yep. In the American system, I compare that to the piñata principle, where the idea is when the other side puts a witness on the stand, you beat him with a stick, and theoretically the truth will come out.
I love it. So and it's funny because that concept is almost the opposite of, I always joke about the political systems, because when my wife and I argue, I always say, well, just look at the House of Commons. What do you expect me to say? You know, she says, well, how can you get so upset? How can you get so excited about stuff? Yeah. And I said, well, just look at the cultural difference. But go and anyone who's never done this, by the way, if just Google House of Commons Prime Minister's Question Time, it's just pure entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
But you guys are so politically correct in your political system. And so in a way you're saying that the American legal system is actually a little bit opposite to that, because I feel like we are pretty polite in England. Do you think?
Yeah, I think you are more polite in England in the court system.
Yeah.
In America, it can get nasty. It's not always nasty, and most of the attorneys that I come up against, I respect.
Yep.
Many of them I like.
Right.
And we all know it's a round world.
Right.
If you mistreat me today, I will mistreat you tomorrow.
Right.
But there's so much emotion involved in the courtroom that even the lawyers sometimes let it get the best of us.
Right.
And you know, we're a little bit too strident, we're a little bit too hard on the witnesses. Some witnesses you have to do that with, most witnesses you don't. But it's a highly emotionally charged environment.
It's for me as an actor, it's truly fascinating, because I think I berated or I made fun of my wife for 20 years for watching Dateline. I never used to watch it.
Right.
I said, what are you watching that for? You know? I just started watching it, I guess, at the start of the pandemic, and I'm just glued to all that courtroom drama. I just find it fascinating.
Yeah.
last night, quick spoiler alert for 20 seconds, I watched a Netflix show called Long Shot. I don't know whether have you seen that?
No.
So basically, in a nutshell, it's a documentary about a guy who was going to be put into the electric chair, were it not for the fact that he went to a baseball game, Dodgers baseball game in LA, and he was literally, by pure coincidence, caught on Larry David's show, Curb Your Enthusiasm,
Yes.
some outtakes, literally, like, you know, picture thousands of people. Larry David goes down, and they're filming secretly because they don't want people to know. And this guy is walking down with his little girl.
Wow.
And his lawyer said to him, "I'm going to get you off." He didn't know about that filming, but he said he believed that this guy was innocent. And anyway, so it's a fascinating story. But the lawyer kind of reminded me of your bio a little bit because he said, you know, I'm out for the good, for the little guy. I'm out for justice. I'm out for truth. So, you know, how did that come about? Just tell us, going from that decision from corporate America, like what was it a specific case? Tell us about that.
Yeah, there was a defining moment for me. One of the corporations that my big law firm, when I first got out of law school, represented was an asbestos company. And asbestos, very bad stuff, has killed a lot of people. And one of the things that you would have to do sometimes is take a deposition of someone in their own home, in a hospital bed, literally dying of asbestos-related disease, because they're not going to be there for the trial. And I was a young lawyer, and I was sitting around this gentleman's bed with all these other lawyers representing all these asbestos companies. And, you know, he's hooked up to the tubes, and his wife is standing there, and all the lawyers are trying to, you know, get him to admit he doesn't remember what product's name was on the box. And this man, he started out working in the Naval Yard, founded his own construction business, built his own home, built whole neighborhoods, built his own airplane, and learned to become a pilot, right? His wife is standing there with such dignity, watching this unfold.
And this guy's going to die.
He's going to die. He has mesothelioma. And I said to myself, this is who I should be representing. I should be representing this guy and this woman against me and these other people. And I went back and I talked to my mentor at the firm, and I said, I don't think I want to be doing this anymore. I think I want to do plaintiff's law. And we talked about doing plaintiff's law and the difference, and within a few months I was elsewhere.
Wow. Yeah. And how long, after that moment, how long did it take for you to actually start your own firm?
Well, I joined up with a guy who his firm represented injured railroad workers, which is a niche practice. Stayed with him for like 7 years, and then opened my own practice, which I've been doing for 20 years now.
Amazing. Tell us about the. I mean, I'd love to know if there's a story there, or just briefly the United States Supreme Court thing you argued. I mean, how did that come about? God. I mean, that's fascinating.
Yeah, I represented an injured railroad worker who he and his track gang were out on the tracks replacing track in the middle of a heat wave. I mean, it was like 95 degrees.
When was this? How many years ago?
Oh my goodness. Well, I argued in 94. Okay. So this actually happened probably in 90 or 91. All these guys are out there replacing track, 100 degrees for days at a time. One gentleman has a heart attack and dies. I mean, that's how hot it is. He dies. The supervisor says, okay, everybody get back to work. So this one man, he's laying there covered with something, baking like a potato. That's what his coworkers said. He was baking like a potato. We had to keep working. My guy just happened to be, know this guy all his life. My guy was like 20 years younger. My guy's friend was this guy's friend.
Was the guy there? Sorry, were they both together? Sorry.
Yeah. Small, so say 5 minute a track gang. And my guy has a complete emotional collapse. Ends up in his basement, curled up in a fetal position, institutionalized, because he saw this happen. And so the legal issue was, under the law that railroad workers bring their cases under, can you bring a lawsuit for purely emotional injuries? Because my guy had no physical injuries, he just had a mental collapse. And we went, you know, the trial judge said yes, the appellate court said yes. We went in front of the United States Supreme Court, and Justice Thomas wrote the majority opinion against me. It was 5-4 against me, but Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote the dissenting report, so I can tell people that even though I lost, I was still right.
Wow, that is absolutely fascinating. And so that experience, how many days were you there for?
Well, in front of the court, you only have an hour. Each side has an hour to argue.
So did that experience, inspire you in your American legal system? Or was it the opposite? How did that leave you feeling about your profession and the American legal system, having got to basically the top? You can't go any further.
Yeah.
The top.
Well, it's funny because it almost brought me full circle. In law school, you feel like you're about to engage in a very noble profession.
Yep.
You then go out and start fighting the fights, and you see how rough and tumble and street level it can be. Uh-huh. Arguing in front of the Supreme Court, you're back up at the level of ideas and statutes and statutory interpretation. So you're at that elevated level again, which is kind of where you start out in law school. And when you walk into that chamber and they've been there
They're sitting there.
They're all sitting there, and they're not much farther than you are from me.
That's amazing.
And you feel the history of it.
Yeah.
You feel the history of it. Here's an aside, though. When you argue in front of the Supreme Court, you get a feather, right? There's a feather in you take it home.
Like a real feather? Like a bird's
real
feather?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like a quill.
But is it actually a pen?
It's not a pen. It's just a feather.
Just a feather, yeah.
Right.
Is there a color? Is there a color?
White.
All right.
White.
Okay.
Took it home, had it at my house for a long time. Then my wife and I get married, and as often happens, she starts cleaning out my stuff. So one day I'm actually taking trash down to the trash can outside our house, and there's my feather. And I'm like, Lisa, what did you do? She's like, what? It was just an old feather. I'm like, no.
She didn't know.
She didn't know. But I saved the feather.
I was saying, haven't you got it framed now in a frame for goodness sake?
Well, now it's in my office.
It is?
Now it's in my office where nobody can get it but me.
But but going, I just want to stay with this for a second. It's just so fascinating. So there you are. Is it it's being recorded? It's recorded your arguments, right?
Orally.
Yeah. But wait. So there's no sound recording of it.
No sound. There is sound recording. No visual recording.
Yeah,
just sound.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, how nervous were you?
The night before at 2:00 in the morning, I remember practicing my opening statement before they start in on you with the questions, and I completely forgot every single thing.
You practiced it out loud?
Everything out loud, yeah.
And are you standing in front of a mirror?
Actually, I was. I was sitting at in a hotel.
Yeah.
Here's the writing table, here's the mirror practicing,
Yeah.
and my mind went blank. Completely blank. I forgot everything.
This is in the middle of the night?
This is the middle of the night. Okay. And I said, okay, I got to stop. I went to sleep, and I woke up, and I remember everything.
But do you not like have a notepad standing there? So could you not have looked down at notes?
I have. When you go up to the podium, you do have notes. But I will tell you, and you might feel some of this now. We're actively engaged in something here. It's hard to look down at the notes, find the note, find the point,
gotcha.
and then in a natural kind of a thing.
Sure.
So you have the notes there, which they're really there in case you panic and you go blank.
Yeah.
But it's not a good thing to argue from notes.
Okay. And just as a side, I always tell many parents come to me and ask about their children acting. And I always tell them if they're in a part, stand in front of the mirror, just like Bill did. There's a lot of similarities between acting and being a lawyer. Stand in front of a mirror and repeat over and over if your child is doing a play or has lines. Just as a quick aside. Mm-hmm. But so you wake up, you're refreshed, mm-hmm. and you get there, and in the moment as you're starting, so it just took off, and it sort of all happened as you wanted it. Were there any surprises for you in your performance?
No, there were no surprises for me. What I found was, how they say an athlete gets in the zone?
Sure.
That's what I felt like. All the nervousness and the fear melted away, and I felt like I'm where I should be right now at this exact moment in my life. I'm ready to go, and boom.
And then, so you said you speak for an hour, but is that including questions back and forth?
Yeah, actually, it was half an hour. The total thing is an hour. Each side gets half an hour, and that includes questions, which with the Supreme Court happens right away. They go in
do
right
you
away.
do you not speak for more than 30 minutes? Is that the idea?
Right.
Okay, so you
And you're timed. I mean,
right.
you're. Yeah.
And so the questions that came, do you like even today remember the questions they asked you?
I remember some of the questions. I remember one question, Justice Rehnquist, who was the Chief Justice. I was arguing, see this statute, I said it was a progressive statute. It moves to encompass more and more rights, not become more restrictive. And he looked at me and he said, so you're telling me the statute is a ratchet? And I know that he's thinking this.
What's a ratchet?
That's what I think he thought. I didn't know what a ratchet was. A ratchet is a tool that only moves in one direction. Okay, and I said, yes, it is a ratchet. It only moves in one direction. And I could see that he thought he was going to catch me, and he didn't catch me.
So look, but I'm going to ask you now because, like, will you come back for a second airing?
Absolutely.
Because there's so much to talk. We were only scratching the surface. So fascinating.
This is fun. I like this.
So let me ask you. So moving on from the Supreme Court, writing. So why don't you just tell us where you are now? Pandemic. You managed to get a criminal justice came out last year during the pandemic. I assume, just like my first book came out. Why don't you just, because people know you, I feel like you're the John Grisham of the main line. And I bow to you because I just know how hard it is to write one book, let alone 4. So tell us where you are, for people who know you, or people, hopefully, this will be on YouTube and a bit further afield, just give us a quick update of where you are right now in terms of writing.
Right. Well, I have a book that's going to come out in June of 22 with Ocean View called Backstory, about a guy who wakes up. It's completely different from these.
So
totally
not part
amnesia,
of the Philadelphia legal series.
Not part of the Philadelphia legal series. Guy wakes up, amnesia, remembers nothing about himself, and has to find out who he is and learns he has a whole different life. He starts out in the Midwest, comes to Philadelphia, goes to Vegas. It's an odyssey. It's a travel. Okay.
So you're writing that right now?
No, I wrote that. I just sent my edits of the publisher's edits back to them yesterday. Wow. During the pandemic, I wrote three books and redid Backstory. And another one, because I had extra time on my hands because I'm not traveling back and forth to the office. One book was kind of like a lighthearted comedy about COVID. Are
they all separate, these books? They're not a series?
Yeah, these aren't a series. My agent read it and said, Bill, you're not a humorist. Next.
So wait, so that's done? You're not even going to put it out there?
Eventually I'll put it out, but not now. Wow. Another one which was kind of like a George Floyd scenario, which is, I think it's my best writing ever, but it's so political.
Before George Floyd happened?
After George Floyd happened.
Okay, so you're basing it on that?
Similar to that, yeah. But it's so politically charged that my agent said, although it is my best writing, we have to sit on this, we have to let it wait for a little bit.
Wow. What, for the timing?
For the timing, because there's just too many raw emotions. So we're going to have to sit on that. Okay. And
so it's called a Backstory, the one that's coming out next year?
Yes, Backstory.
And so it is the Philadelphia legal series, is that, are you putting a lid on that, or are you going to come back to that?
I will eventually come back to that because I like the characters, I like the series. Yeah. My agent is shopping it to like TV producers out in California. Right. And you never know, maybe something will happen, maybe it won't. Right. But I do like the series, and the characters are all growing during the series. Right. Most of the characters are becoming bigger people, some darker people, some stronger people. So that series will eventually, maybe in a couple of years.
Can they be read in any order, or should you start at the beginning?
They can be read as standalones.
They can, okay.
But the characters, it's a similar troupe of characters, although you get additional characters with each book. Yep. And it's fun to see the characters go through their arcs. Mm-hmm. Like in the book you just read, A Criminal Justice, Piper McFarland, right, who is Mick McFarland's wife. Yep. He's the main protagonist in A Criminal Defense.
He's the one, let me just say, he's the one that you think, how is he going to get out of this? It's impossible. And I love those kind of stories.
Right. But she starts out in A Criminal Defense as just the wife. Yep. And In the third book, A Killer's Alibi, she is now doing Innocence Project cases, and finally in A Criminal Justice, when it's almost inevitable that her husband Mick is going to be convicted of murder. When the legal maneuverings don't work, the law firm isn't getting him anywhere, she, as his wife, decides that she's going to figure this out. And so she travels across the country and figures out who the players are behind this basically to rescue him. So she has grown as a character from the first book to the fourth book tremendously.
And so you don't want to lose those. I mean, you want to come back to those.
I want to
get built them up.
Now that I built them up.
A real quick aside: Jake Tapper just wrote a book, a thriller, and he said in one time not long ago, he said, they said, how do you have time to write? He says, well, he said, I didn't travel back and forth during the pandemic. I found that 15 minutes a day, I got through it, and I just don't believe him. So my question to you is I just don't believe that a writer can write a book in 15 minutes a day. So let me ask you said you wrote 3 books last year in the pandemic. Just talk a bit about your writing process. I want to know times. I want to know how long. I want to know how you get rid of take care of the pit bulls. Just so let's just concentrate on last year, because it's kind of interesting because of pandemic. Just tell us a bit about your writing process there.
Yeah, well,
3 books is a lot. That's incredible.
Yeah. Well, last year it was different because of the pandemic, and I was at home almost all the time. And I was still running the cases, but you couldn't try any cases. So that big chunk of time went away and opened up. So I had bigger chunks of time, so I could write 4 hours a day.
4 hours.
But I'm not someone who will sit down for 4 hours every morning. I'll get up, I'll make the coffee, I'll walk the dogs, sit down for an hour, putz around, work for 2 hours. Do the law for 2 or 3 hours, maybe do the book for an hour. And what I've learned is, early on when I first started writing, I couldn't be bothered. If I'm writing, you can't bother me. Now, I'm okay. I could be writing a chapter in the midst of it, and Lisa, my wife, could say, "Hey, the dog needs to be walked," or "Can you do this?" or "Let's have a conversation." And I can do it, and I can get right back to where I was. I mean, what about you? When you write, do you find that you can get in and out of it, or do you have to have absolutely dedicated time?
Well, I just did an interview last week, and I said, I have to have all my personal admin. The British Army used to call it personal admin. So I have to have the cleaning. If the cleaning needs to go to the cleaner, my emails need to be done pretty much. So that's the first thing for me. And just yesterday, my 16-year-old is now back at school, and I have to take him in the morning, and then I have to pick him up sometimes at 2 or at 3, and I get so frustrated because then there's something else, like I have an audition, a self-tape to do, and I just started getting really frustrated that I can never get my chunk. The only time I can get a chunk of 3 or 4 hours is on a Sunday morning. So funny that you should ask that. I literally just said to myself yesterday, you've just got to turn over a new leaf. If you get half an hour, if you get an hour, that's it now. No more, I need my 3-4 hours. And that's the thing with writers. If you're just starting writing, you gotta, and you are lucky enough to have those chunks of time, just get into the habit of working that time. I mean, like I had the interview today. I thought, I've got 30 minutes. I'm reading my second novel out loud to myself before it goes to the editor. I thought, I'm going to do that for 20 minutes. So I just recently, I can say, hand on heart, have just started saying, okay, you got 30 minutes, you got 30 minutes. What about, so that's your, now, what about drafts, a number of drafts? Like another guest said recently that, Stephen King has to have a perfect chapter, before he goes on, like just a little bit about, and I can't believe we're all getting the time to wrap up soon, but anyway, you'll come back. Just how many drafts?
Well, what I do is I have a very loose outline. I know where the book is going to go. I know 3 or 4 of the major turning points, and then I start writing. I'll do the first chapter. Then I'll print it out. I'll edit it, type in the edits, and then I'll do the second chapter.
Do you like me? Do you or do you not write like one or two sentences for the synopsis for each chapter?
No.
Not even?
No, because I want my chapters, I want the story to unfold like real life.
Organically?
Organically.
Real life. Quick question about, life. Sorry to interrupt, but your present tense thing. I noticed that you were writing in the present tense in the fourth book. Do you do that in all the books?
I do that in all of the Philadelphia Legal Series books.
Okay.
Yeah. In law, one of the things I learned is when you write in present tense, you make it feel more immediate.
Yep.
It's happening now.
Yep.
It's not something that happened in the past. It's happening now. Some people have a hard time reading in present tense.
Well, I do, and I did, and at first it was jarring for me reading your book, and I just thought, I mean, it was so fascinating. That's why I wanted to bring it up. We'll talk more about it next time. But I got used to it in about a chapter or two.
Okay,
I used to hate it. I'll be honest. I used to hate. I thought, I can't read this book in present tense. And the other thing I hate is jumping back and forward in time. I just keep me in the present moment for thrillers.
Right.
So I noticed that you did that, and I just wondered how hard it was to do that. But because it's tricky, you're in the present tense, and then you still have to refer to something in the past. So then you go back.
Right.
So, but anyway, so your next book is not like that. It's regular past tense, is it?
The next book is regular past tense. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. What else did I? Oh yeah, series. So, how important do you think it is, as a writer these days, to write a series? Like, I mean, obviously it's important, but what are your thoughts on that?
Everything that I'm told, my agent tells me, both my publishers have told me, the publishers want, the agents want, because people want a series. People want to get comfortable with a character and see that character go through stuff.
And it makes sense. So again, if we like to throw in a few tips here and there in the show. So again, when I started writing my novels, there wasn't the whole series thing. It didn't really matter. But then as time progressed and they were still on my laptop, several years down the line, I started researching, publishing, and series. I mean, it's like Netflix. It's like, you watch, I search Netflix and I want a series to get into. It's so funny. Yeah. I almost don't want to watch a movie anymore. And I guess that's the point. It's the same as a standalone book. So that's interesting. And then the book that's coming out next summer, is that going to be a series, or is that just going to be a standalone?
It can be a series.
Okay.
It can be. We want to see how people react to the protagonist.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a real gritty protagonist. Yeah. He has a real past. He's done some bad things. Yeah. He's trying to find out and regaining his memory, am I a good guy or am I a bad guy? What am I? And so we want to see how people react to him.
Right.
I think they'll like him at the end because in part it's a redemption tale.
Right.
So it's open-ended. He can be doing other stuff.
Okay.
Later.
And I realize we're almost out of time. It's just I just want to mention that you have 9,000 reviews on your first book. Did you know that on Amazon?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So that speaks to the quality of your work, and I really congratulate you for that, because I know how hard it is. I wanted to talk about reviews and how to get them for writers. We'll do that next time, because we're pretty much out of time. Is there any give us one quick nugget that you learned during pandemic that you perhaps didn't know before or didn't do before about writing? Just something that shifted for you, maybe, or maybe nothing did.
I don't know that the pandemic itself made me change my view of writing. Other than that, the one thing that I learned from the pandemic is how much we really need to be around other people. Right. Now, I mean, as an actor, you know that. As a writer, you know that. Because everything you bring to acting and writing has to come from real interactions with real people. But in the pandemic, what I felt we were all starved for, starved for, other than going to restaurants and theaters, is being physically around our friends.
And Bill, let me cut you off there. Sorry to cut you off. We'll pick up there next time. Thank you so much to William L. Myers Jr. for a wonderful conversation. Sorry I had to cut it off a bit early there. You can find out more about Bill and all his books at www.williamlmyersjr.com, and he even has his own YouTube show which is called Writing the Wrong?
Wrongs.
Writing Wrongs. Yeah. I'm your host, Richard Lyntton, author of North Korea Deception, an international political spy thriller set in London, Moscow, Vladivostok, and Pyongyang, available in all formats on Amazon.com and all around the world. Hyde Park Deception, book 2 in the Deception series, is now available on pre-order. See you next time.